If you're interested in learning about careers but don't always have time, the Interviewing People 10-minute highlight show is for you. Learn the big ideas here. If you want more information, you can always watch the full video later. This week's highlights are from my interview with Tyler Akers, who earned an ROTC scholarship, was an Army intelligence officer, and is now a demand planning and analysis manager at Groove Life in Nashville, Tennessee. Enjoy the show. We're going to start with some of the questions Tyler had when he was in school and was looking ahead to his future.
There's obviously lots of questions that students are kind of posed with, where do I go to school? What do I want to do? How am I going to pay for it? Is it the right decision for me? Because it's not. There's lots of opportunities today that doesn't necessarily, equal college that can pay just as well in other areas. And so I started to kind of canvas, what was kind of my priorities, right? So I wanted to kind of imitate that camaraderie within the football team, but I also wanted to go to school on as less debt as I could, right? And so just researching around, I found Army ROTC is kind of that one size fits all for both of those. And so junior year, I believe it was, I went down to Ohio University, where I had applied for this scholarship, and they make you do a test, right? So you come in and it's proposed with a multiple level of leadership interviews with some of the folks who were seniors in that program at Ohio University. Then of course the Army's a physical job, and so there was a physical element. There was a PT test, as we call it, 2-mile runs, 2 minutes of push-ups, and 2 minutes of sit-ups. And so as candidates across the country are participating in this process, you kind of get shaken out on an order of merit list, right? And okay. The Army would review on a cyclical yearly basis those applicants, and throughout that next year would start issuing scholarships from the top down of, hey, these are the guys and gals that we think are 100% we want, right? And then 90% we like these guys too. So they would issue 4-year scholarships to those cadets, believing that they'll be future leaders of the Army and they'll do great things for the country.
Next, Tyler's going to talk about what the ROTC scholarship has to offer.
Yeah, so with the ROTC scholarship, I'll give a little kind of some backbone to what it is and what it equates to. For me, I was a 4-year scholarship winner, which means, hey, freshman through senior year, your tuition is completely paid for. I was given a monthly stipend, which is a tax-free, basically, paycheck. As a freshman, it's like $300 a month, and as a senior, it was up to $500 a month. A book stipend, which was about $600 a semester, and then a housing stipend, which was around $2,500 a semester. Wow. And so it's an extremely great opportunity financially to go to school. We'll call it for free, but yeah, there's obviously an obligation to the service post graduation.
Tyler also talks about what type of schedule a college student might expect to experience while being an ROTC.
Kind of a lifestyle. It's almost like being a college athlete. You've got obligations outside of the classroom that take you away from, normal college life that you would call it. My personal experience, we had to, we had PT, which is physical training. I'll refer to it as PT moving forward. But PT would be 3 to 5 days a week, depending on kind of what group you're in. Starting out, you would exercise from probably 6 to 7:30 Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And then you kind of shower and you go to class and you do your normal classwork. And then depending on what level you are, as a freshman, you really just kind of participate. And so there's a leadership lab as well, and then also a classroom portion as well. And you just really start to learn the basic fundamentals of the Army in those environments. As you progress and as you become a sophomore, as a junior, you start to take on leadership levels within the ROTC program. And so obviously there's a leadership element there. As I'm now a sophomore, a squad leader, as we would call it, looking after and feeding information to all of the freshmen that might be kind of under my leadership command, if you will. So certainly as you progress, the level of complexity grows, the level of responsibility grows. As a junior and senior, you are learning to run missions and to run operations both in the field and in garrison, which is just kind of your office term for running in, or being in the Army.
It was also very interesting to have Tyler talk about students who don't go to college for ROTC, but when they get to college, they sometimes join. So here's a little bit of more information about how that could happen.
Right, but as a normal college student, we often had, freshmen come in who would just take the leadership lab just to see if they liked it. It still counts as credits. It still counted towards undergraduate programs. And so there was always 10 or 15% of our population that just kind of cycled in and out, just kind of tasting it. And, a lot of them fizzled out, but, we also found a lot of good leaders through that as well,
right.
Who stuck for around long enough that they got a scholarship as a sophomore.
Something Tyler's really glad that he did is go to college with no student debt. And he's going to talk a little bit more about how that happened and what impact that has had on his life.
It's been a huge blessing, huge blessing. I was relatively, concerned about that as a junior. I can't remember what started it, but I started listening to Dave Ramsey, his podcast. And Dave Ramsey, for those who might know him, is, he's got this financial peace program, which is based around being debt free. And, what are their options besides going into debt for things like college and cars? And so I just had this kind of seed in my mind that said, hey, if you don't get this scholarship, what are your alternate ways to do that, right? So I didn't know that I had got my scholarship till I think about halfway through my senior year. And so that first semester back in high school, I was evaluating, hey, what's the National Guard have to offer? What does Owens have to offer? Some way to bridge what I still want to achieve professionally, but doing it the most way that is, financially feasible.
Right.
And I had friends in college that are still paying off their student loans that are, pay more than they do for their cars for student loans. And I don't know how they do it, because I've got, a small amount of debt in a car, and it's like that weighs on me. I can imagine that with multiple loans, right?
Right.
So yeah, as much as I could encourage students to look at their alternate paths, you have to pay what you sign up for, and at some point or another that catches up, right?
If you're anything like me, you don't know any Army intelligence officers. So it was interesting to hear Tyler talk about what he did as an Army intelligence officer.
The most basic level is, hey, think like the enemy does, and what are they going to do based on where we're at and what our mission is, right? And so it's a lot of just kind of mapping, and they call it IPB, intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And so it's just mapping out, if I was wearing the foreign or the enemy commander's hat, what would I do strategically with the elements that I have? Or, if it's a tank company, they're going to maneuver like this. And so it's just thinking in like what the enemy would do.
Finally, Tyler talks about the importance of soft skills and how those oftentimes go beyond the physical skills that a person might learn before going into a job.
Part of that personal branding is, how do I exploit my strengths to, achieve the things I want to achieve? For me, my relationship building and communication, I think, have been strong suits for me personally. And so walking into interviews and walking into new organizations and saying, hey, this is what I know I'm pretty good at, and leveraging those and saying, try to make that, articulate that to those across the aisle, was important to me, and really how I got my first job at Assyrian. I was a supplier manager. My boss said, hey, the technical side of our job, you have like no experience in, but the elements I can't teach, the soft skills, if you will, you do have, and that's hard to find. What you have is hard to find. And so, managing several suppliers in Canada around the Toronto market, remotely, living down here in Nashville there's an element of difficulty to that requires somebody who's really good at building relationships and really good at communicating. And so, but the Excel side, the SKU stuff, the in-house product, I didn't deal with any of that in the Army,
Right.
but I can teach you that,
Right.
And so just leveraging your strengths and knowing what those are, but also knowing your weaknesses and working to correct those, right?
Yep. Thank you for visiting the Interviewing People CareerCast, and to be sure you don't miss additional career information, please click subscribe so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for watching, and as always, remember the best part about Mondays is interviewing people.